apparently 2 years ago, a woman named Jamie Lee Jones, and she's telling ABC News this, and they've corroborated a lot of it, was gang raped by Halliburton employees in Iraq. And then, after they did that to her, they put her in a container and wouldn't let her out. They had an armed guard, so she couldn't tell her story. And then they threatened her and said, hey, if you tell anybody about this rape, you'll lose your job, etc., etc. And they wouldn't let her talk to anybody for 24 hours. And finally, a sympathetic guard gave her a cell phone, and she called her dad in Texas. And then her dad called their congressman, who happens to be a Republican, and said, you got to get me out of here. I'm being held hostage. Even though I'm an American, I'm being held hostage by other Americans. They're not military. They're these Halliburton guys. And my God, I've been gang raped. I mean, this is the story I told you about earlier in the show, that you can't quite believe it. I mean, it's comic book evil. I mean, if you put it in a movie, I'd say, oh, that's ridiculous. That's so over the top. They're really going to do that to a poor young American girl that's there? When I first read the headline, I was like, oh, it's not going to make much traction, because I thought it was an Iraqi. And that's the sick part of what's happening in the world. If it was an Iraqi girl they did it to, it'd be a little blowback on it. The Iraqis would be pissed, and they'd sweep it under the rug. But it turns out they swept it under the rug when it was an American girl for 2 years. Now, I don't think they should be swept under the rug under any circumstances. But here's where the story gets really bad. If you didn't think it was bad enough already. They go to the State Department and the Justice Department, and they say, are you going to do something about this? Okay, she went and got tests done, and she, every part of her story is corroborated by others, right? And the Republican congressman is saying, hey, wait a minute, you got to take action here. And the State Department and the Justice Department did nothing for 2 years. So finally, she had to, and first of all, when you ask them, they say, oh, no comment, no comment. But yeah, no, we understand that case exists, and we're looking into it. Well, how long are you going to look into it? What is it going to take, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years? How long is it going to take? And then the second part of it is, well, we're not sure that those contractors are under any U.S. law. Well, that's really comforting. So you've known for 2 years that they're under no U.S. law. You've known that they raped this poor girl, and that they could do it again, and you didn't do anything about it? Well, they're under no U.S. law. You didn't think maybe you should change that after the girl got raped? This is a hideous story. I can't imagine how it could get any worse. I mean, just when you thought Halliburton couldn't get any worse. And what's Halliburton's response, by the way? They're like, oh, yeah. So after we made a ton of money from KBR and this Iraq invasion, after we made billions and billions and our stock price went through the roof, we sold our subsidiary. So KBR, what name so? I don't know KBR. Who's KBR? We already sold it. We're not responsible. Yeah, you're responsible. You were running it when they did this to the girl. Now you want to wash your hands of it because you sold it? Because you saw this coming? And you think this isn't one of the reasons that they sold it? Of course! Look, they already took as much money as they possibly could out of Iraq. And all they saw ahead for KBR was trouble. And so they sold it, right? Now they say, oh, no. Ain't got nothing to do with us. Yes, it does. Yes, it damn well does. Dick Cheney, by the way, our vice president, still making money off this company. He's got it in a blind trust where he knows it's going to Halliburton. What kind of a blind trust is that? It's really, you put this stuff in a movie and nobody would believe it. They'd be like, oh, that's so unrealistic. That can't happen in real life. But it does, and it did. So now this girl, again, her name is Jamie Lee Jones. She's now 22. She's going to civil suit and saying, "Hey, look, I gotta get recognition that this thing happened, and I gotta make sure it doesn't happen again." And and this is my only avenue because the Justice Department will not bring a case, even though we ask them over and over. And so, of course, now the government's like, well, I don't know if a civil suit's the way to go. I mean, we won't do anything on the criminal end, but good luck to you. Civil suit, seems kind of fishy. Do these people have no conscience? I know what you're all screaming into the radio or on as you're watching this right now. Of course they don't have a conscience. Of course they don't. But I gotta hope that there's some consequence to this. Or is this also going to be water under the bridge? Oh, yeah, so they gang raped a 20-year-old girl, American girl, and they kept her in a container and they wouldn't let her out, and they tried to intimidate her. And yeah, and the government knew about it and didn't do anything about it. How can they get away with this stuff? Isn't anybody going to do anything? And then finally, think if this happened under a Democratic administration. Everybody at the Justice Department, the State Department, and the President himself would have already been ripped to shreds. Democrats, rapists, they allow this woman. I mean, look at what they said about Clinton when he didn't even do anything, right? All the stupid charges they had against him. Imagine if something like this actually happened under the Clinton administration. They would have impeached him already. What happened yesterday afternoon? He would have been done. He would have walked out of office. My question is, and this is the same question, unfortunately, we keep asking in every one of these cases, will this also pass? Will there also be no consequences for this kind of heinous crime? Unfortunately, we're going to find out.